Hello, I am Trifina Wilson, and I'm a business and emotional intelligence strategist. And welcome to the Get It Leadership Podcast. If you are an entrepreneur, startup, or business owner, then the Get It Leadership Podcast is just for you. Every week, I will be discussing tips you can use to improve your emotional intelligence leadership, well-being, and business. I will show you how to achieve success by using the tools you already have. Today, we have a very special and talented guest, Evelina D. How are you? Welcome to the show and thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me, Trifina.
How are you?
I'm very, very well. I'm quite busy recently, as you can imagine. Everyone's well-being suddenly became number one priority, and I'm glad to be able to offer some help and solutions to people where it's needed the most.
Fantastic. You are the founder of Elite Mind Academy, which offers neuroscience-based training and organisational development, where you help organisations maintain individual well-being. And what I like about you is that not only can you speak 6 languages, which is just amazing, but you are combining neuroscience research and behavioural psychology with practical performance coaching. So what inspired you on your journey?
Oh, well, I'm originally from Lithuania, and when I came to London, I thought that I'm coming here just for short summer holidays that was supposed to last a couple of months. And I found myself in a very difficult situation where I couldn't really come back. So I had to create my new life suddenly out of this circumstances that I suddenly found myself in, and obviously leaving family behind, not having any money belongings with me, not having any friends, and like I mentioned, not speaking the language as well was a challenge to say to say the least. But what was interesting that I had this determination to create something out of those circumstances. So I had crazy few years, sleeping probably 4 hours a night, and I went on to have a family. I went to study at university. After I've learned the language, I decided to build my career and have few jobs, and eventually started building my business. But at the same time, I was driving there for my performance and had this youthful, naive optimism of wanting it all and wanting it now. I guess I felt a bit guilty for leaving my family, for leaving my country. And Lithuania is one of those countries that have the highest suicide rates in the world. So I guess to soothe my guilt, I went to a charity called Matri that works with suicidal people. And it was really there that it really hit me that people respond so differently to the same scenarios and the same situation that happened to us. And I'll never forget the moment where right in front of me, there was the guy that you look at him and you think, well, he's got it all. And yet there he was right in front of me at the respite center for suicidal, not wanting to live. And me, on the other hand, like I've already said, finding myself in that foreign country, and I never felt that way. So it really inspired that question, well, what makes a difference? Why certain people thrive and grow with challenges and become better and stronger with it, and then others become stressed, anxious, depressed, not being able to work or not even wanting to live. So it's from there really that I've started studying psychology and neuroscience and interpersonal neurobiology and anything that I could get my hands on that would explain that difference in individual resilience. And again, I guess once you have those tools, you cannot not share it. And I find through my research and what I was finding that there is a lot of resources and a lot of information in neuroscience research and interpersonal neurobiology. But it's not being translated into practical, accessible resources just for ordinary people. So our approach to well-being and to organizational well-being is pretty much limited to mindfulness and some yoga class, and it's not really looking at the deeper level. So So I guess having those both experiences of having that kind of high performance environment, working as well with the most successful entrepreneurs and working with leaders, helping businesses, and also working with those most vulnerable people, I was looking for ways to bridge the gap between the two and make sure that we can, on one hand, that we can achieve that organizational performance without sacrificing personal well-being, but also that some of those who are struggling with mental health issues would also be given opportunities to contribute equally to the society.
Great experiences, and I'm sure amazing work that you've done. I think you kind of highlight the point that we should never judge a book by its cover. Just because someone looks like they've got it all together and they've got the world at their feet doesn't mean they don't have problems as well. And I can imagine you probably saw a lot of people in that work that you did that, like you said, they look like they have it all together, but yet they just didn't want to continue.
Absolutely, and I think it's our culture that puts on pedestal those people who are strong, and somehow vulnerability is not a nice trait to have, and it is a weakness to ask for help and to ask for support. Well, really it shouldn't be. So I had experiences where I've worked with organizations where some of the top leaders and executives ask for business coaching, but then all I end up is actually sitting there and listening to them pouring their hearts out, because simply they don't feel like at their level of organization, at these top leadership positions, they have a right to express a weakness or vulnerability. So that's, again, a very big aspect that I'm trying to communicate to others, that it's so important to build that trust, to build those clear lines of communication where, we should not hide behind our masks of job titles and roles and responsibilities, but just connect as human beings and connect on the level that we all have the same needs, and how can we help each other regardless of our seniority lines.
And that is very important as well. And I think myself being a coach and you as well, we kind of do double up as a therapist as well. A lot of our coaching sessions do tend to align very well with therapy as well. That's why it's really important for everyone to have a coach or someone they can actually confide in and talk to. So from the work that you have done, what has been the most memorable moment for you?
Oh, there's been so many of them, but I think one that really stands out is something that happened quite early in my experience, when I was working more of a therapeutic support for one-to-one individuals, and once through my door walked this very vulnerable person who's been struggling with anxiety for all of her life that she's remembered. Now, she came to me because at the time it started to really affect her personal life, her relationships, to the point that as well she was struggling to go to work. She was having panic attacks at work every time she would receive some KPIs or targets to deliver. Every time she had to report to her direct managers, she was having that bit of a meltdown, and she was struggling to cope with that. So I asked her, how long does she think will take for her to overcome that anxiety? And she said, I don't know, several years. I've been having this for all of my life. And then I said to her that the most sessions that I do for therapy, anxiety-based therapy, is 12 sessions. And she obviously sounded very disappointed with that, and she said, "Okay, let's start with 12." And with the idea that there will be many sessions of 12. And what happened really, that she only ever needed 10 sessions, and after that she only used 10 sessions, and she was promoted at work to a management position. And the level of confidence that she has developed, and the level of difference that people could see around her, that then I ended up also working with few of her family members, because they were so impressed in the change and that positivity towards life that she has developed in that very short period of working with me. That was really, really inspiring for me to see, especially at the beginning of my coaching journey. So that was really, really rewarding to see.
I mean, that's just amazing. Really, really is inspiring, because anxiety can cripple a lot of people in their day-to-day lives. So that's nice to hear that, you know, under the 12 sessions, she was able to, you know, find something that was able to help her. And I feel that is another good example of why well-being is so important in organizations, in companies. But what do you say to organizations that don't understand how important well-being is? So what would you say to them? Why do you think well-being is important in organizations and businesses?
Well, it's not just important, it's crucial. We are investing in our, let's say, we're investing in our physical property, we're investing in our financial assets, but really it's people who actually deliver those profit lines. It's people who deliver those results. And if we are not looking after our people in a long run, then we cannot sustain the level of organizational performance that is needed. And it is very sad to see that very often, especially bigger organizations who do have budget, they don't necessarily invest in strategic implementation of well-being across entire organization. And there is more of this tick box exercise that we look good by having a yoga class at lunch or having puppy therapy on Friday afternoons. But in reality, that does not really address the main issue, why people are stressed, why people are struggling to cope. And I think if you look at statistics about stress and turnover and UK productivity overall, those statistics are really, really sad, because our issues with mental health and well-being are increasing year after year. The work-related stress absences are costing UK economy billions of pounds, and that exactly what shows that what we do here, what we have, does not work. We need to have these infrastructures built in to address underlying issues. And I guess the fact that I didn't look, when I was even researching that individual resilience and well-being, that I didn't just look for these tools, how can you help people who is already, you know, stressed, anxious, depressed, but I have already went a level deeper to do all of the research about what makes their difference in the first place, why people are so resilient and others are not. And by understanding that difference, then you know what exactly you need to do to build that capacity in the first place, rather than plaster up some wounds and put band-aids on a big bleeding wounds.
Very important. So what are your thoughts between the link between well-being and emotional intelligence leadership?
I think it is very, very important, because as human beings, we have evolved to belong to a group. So we are social beings, and for millions of years, we would have not been able to survive on our own. Well, that emotional intelligence is actually teaching us to get the most out of a social environment that we are in, to help us to build the right relationships, to respond in a right way to our situations, to regulate our behavioral responses in relation to the scenario that we are facing in. So that really helps to build those social bonds and social relationships. And that is crucial for well-being, because if you are excluded from the group, if you are not fitting in, if you feel like you don't belong, that has a very negative effect on people's well-being and capacity to cope. And again, that just comes from that evolutionary background that we would have not been able to survive on our own for millions of years. So any rejection or negativity or feeling like we are not contributing to the group, we're not part of the group, feels life-threatening subconsciously to us, and that definitely has detrimental effects on our well-being.
Yeah, you do see in different organizations where, you know, people are wanting to belong to a certain group, want to embed themselves in the office culture, to be seen as the team and to be one of them, one of us. And, you know, that it does have a negative impact when people don't feel like they are belonging to the team. So what has been one of your kind of biggest challenges, and how did you overcome it?
Well, so I think in line with consulting needs and what organizations have been asking me for, it is very often that you find organization that clearly has needs for well-being, for leadership development, for talent strategy, and then they say, we don't have budget for that. So it's been very interesting to see that people are not always being put first, that only the spare budget is being invested in people talent development and strategy and leadership development, and it's not always a part of a key budget. So to address that, I have developed a system where I can calculate how much savings can be made by addressing some stress-related absences and by increasing productivity through improved well-being and performance of their employees. So then, instead of looking at that as an investment, they actually know that it will have a much greater returns on investment. And it is the best and the biggest return on investment is investment in people always. And other difficulty as well is that there are some organizations where top leadership are not involved in their own development. So I had those very awkward conversations with some senior executives who say, my team needs developing and they need those skills X, Y, Z. When I complete all of my diagnostics and when I see what needs to be developing, I can see that part of the leadership is often part of the problem, because we should be leading by example. We should be role models in a way we are communicating, in a way we building trust, in a way we build our teams. And if that top leader is not on board taking feedback and learning from the process, then that definitely impacts their entire organization. So that was a very kind of a painful realization for me, because it's so crucial to have top leaders on board. And I had to say no to working from some organizations where leadership were not interested in developing themselves as well and being on board in shaping the entire program, because I can only set the direction, but at the end of the day, it is those top leaders and executives that will have to transform the organization based on our mutual work.
And they're the ones that have to lead by example as well. And like you said, if they're not on board, then what's the point of working with them? Because they need to be showing change and development, personal development as well, and organizational development. And if they're not on board, then there's no point really. So since you started Elite Mind Academy, have you seen an increase of organizations recognizing the value of having a well-being culture?
Absolutely. I see there is a great increase in the last couple of years. There is a lot of awareness about importance of looking after our mental health. There is more space being created for people just to speak openly about it. There is definitely more openness about alternative approaches, such as introducing, yoga and mindfulness and so on into the business that help to support that well-being. There is still lack of practical tools to address that from strategic point of view. That is something that I'm working on at the moment, and I hope that all of this situation that we have right now is really highlighting the importance of addressing well-being and putting people first, and understanding that has that crucial effect on long-term organizational performance. And the way businesses support people right now at this vulnerable time will really shape their success and their business performance for many, many years, I believe.
So what are your top 3 tips for people leading teams remotely?
Well, first of all, it's communication. And it is very clear that we need to give our people very clear guidelines on what needs to be doing, why we need to do that, and how exactly we are going to do that. Because in times of uncertainty, where people feel threatened and everything is changing every day, as leaders, we have the duty to give that sense of direction and purpose. So just by having that clear communication, so this is exactly what we're going to do, this is why are we doing, so people have that bigger sense of belonging to bigger purpose and direction where we're going, and this is how we're going to do that. So the very specifics, it's really important in providing people with that sense of purpose and direction. And it's important to build that sense of belonging as well in those isolated times. It's important that we don't just focus on our work and targets and communicate that we create that shared field and space for people to just share their emotions, share their struggles, talk about topics outside of work, and just really connect on more of that human level.
And your second top tip?
Well, I kind of said two, really. So one is communication. Yeah. So communicating your what, communicating why, and communicating how. The third is about creating connection and sense of belonging and community, so people have a way to interact beyond work boundaries. And the third one would be really to giving people creative ways how things can be done. So very often when we are threatened with a big change like we have now, we stop doing things that we normally did. And we say that we cannot do this anymore and we cannot do that anymore. But instead, if we look at our strategic goals, if we look at what we still need to achieve and just ask how, then it allows people to come up with all sorts of creative solutions and different ways to still deliver the same targets. And I have example for this in a real company that is actually a charity that works. A farm, actually, it's a farm, and their charitable work based on having children and adults visiting just for educational purposes to get to know more about animals. And now suddenly, as you can believe, in this situation, there couldn't be no visits. So how could they survive? How could they still feed those animals? And they have set up this beautiful project called Goat to Meeting, and they offer businesses to invite a llama or a goat to their Zoom meetings with some educational content and have a little bit of fun while we're all staring at the screen and ending up a little bit zoomed out. It just brings more of that interaction. So I guess wonderful things happen when we allow ourselves, how can I do it, rather than can I do it or can I not. And if you imagine when I came first to London without speaking English, without having resources with me, if I start to question, can I do this, can I not? Can I start a business here? Can I finish university here? Well, of course, our mind is built to keep us safe and to keep us as comfortable as possible. So therefore, we will do anything that we can to stay in that comfort zone. But instead, I never ask that question. I just ask how. And that's how I found my ways of achieving and getting to where I am today.
And that's a great mindset to have. So when you came to London, you knew 2 languages, and the rest you learned here while you were here?
So I'm born in Lithuania, so of course I speak Lithuanian, but that was also part of Soviet Union, so I spoke Russian as well. And I live not very far from Polish border, so I've learned Polish as a child as well. So there were those 3 languages that I've learned when I was very small. And then when I went to school, our school had links with France and French culture. So there I've learned French as well. So yeah, so I was speaking those languages before I came here. And then when I found myself here, I had no choice, but of course to learn the language in order to live and work. And here I've connected with quite a lot of Spanish people as well. I used to work with quite a few Spanish colleagues, so I've learned quite a bit of Spanish there as well, just to communicate with them. So, yeah.
That's great. I think I know hello in most languages, and that's about it. So,
yeah, that gets conversation started.
well,
So
yeah, I know the basics.
Yeah.
Basics is good. Hello and thank you in every language. That's all I need to open doors. Yeah. So, what do you think? What do you think are some well-being best practices while working remotely?
Well, it's got to do a lot with communication links that we have with our employers, employees, with our line managers and the staff that we manage as well. But then it's also about self-leadership skills. So it's not enough just to know what you need to do and how you need to do. Where do you find your motivation and drive to get out of bed? And the easiest way to do this is to build performance habits. So have very strict routines and habits. The same things that you would do every morning religiously, every evening before you go to bed, making sure that you live in sync with your body as well. So listening to your circadian and ultradian rhythms, having regular breaks, making sure that you wake up at the same time, you go to bed exactly the same time, you eat the same time. Some very small things that are being done consistently can really help to maintain that productivity and well-being at home. And also from human evolution point of view, we have some of those hidden needs and hidden drives. And when we find ourselves in a situation like this, it becomes a little bit more difficult to adjust and satisfy those. So those needs, our primary need is for safety and survival. And simply by building routine and familiarity and having the same things all over, it satisfies and calms down some of those neural circuits that demonstrate by simply demonstrating predictability, and I know what's going to happen, I know what we'll expect. So you're increasing that resilience to cope with whatever it's going to happen. Other need is for learning and growth. So that is in contrast to that safety. And unless we feel safe, unless we feel that stable ground between unless we have that stable ground underneath our feet to stand on, we will not feel safe to venture out into new unknown areas and discover. So that is really affecting our learning. So it's important, again, the mindset, and that we asking, how can I do it, instead of doubting myself, and having those stable routines where you can slowly start to build that positivity.
That's great. So what would you like to see as the new normal when we go back to normality in organizations? What would be the new norm for you? What would you like to see?
Well, I really hope that organizations will take some positive learnings out of this. And there are some people who found it incredibly beneficial to work from home, to have more flexible working routines. I really hope that organizations will take that on board and will see that now it's possible and will accommodate individuals and individual needs. Also, I really hope that the importance for well-being and putting people first will be heightened, and hopefully the budgets for investing in people will reflect that.
I think that's important. Flexible working and empathy to one another is definitely what I want to see as the new norm. So what have you been doing that you weren't doing before the pandemic?
Well, to be honest, to me, it wasn't really that much change, because I normally work most of the time from home. And then other part of my work would normally be spent at delivering training workshops, seeing my clients in their offices, and a bit of traveling, some networking, and meeting with clients. So there was a bit of a traveling and networking involved there. So while that aspect moved remotely, I suddenly had a little bit more time to accommodate my own routine on my own terms. So for first few weeks, probably I was a little bit less organized, and I would end up sleeping later and eating more and just snacking on things all day long. However, after a few weeks, I really found that obviously this works to my advantage, and I can schedule my daily routine to my own needs, that I don't need to fit anymore to my clients' requests and travel somewhere to fit their agenda. Now I can have it all on my own terms and my own time. And that's been really, really great, because then I found myself having very stable routine. I do yoga every morning, I meditate every evening, I take very regular breaks, I eat at exactly the same time, I exercise 2 times a day, and it's been really, really great. Also having much more time to read than I would normally do, and to reflect, having space just to step back and think about things. Take more of that stand back approach and look at a way I run my business strategically, rather than just being in it and running with the flow all the time. That's been very beneficial.
Fantastic. You have been very inspiring. Thank you so much for your time. If anyone wants to get in contact with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Well, the best way to reach me is on LinkedIn. I really encourage personal connections and conversations. I offer complimentary consultations and discovery calls, because I think we all as individuals, we respond to the situation in a very different way. And I would very much invite everyone to connect and have that conversation with me and see what can be possible in that collaboration.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to speaking to you again.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye then.
If you like this video, please give a thumbs up, share with your friends, and subscribe now for new videos. Please let me know in the comment section below if you found these tips useful. And if you would like more professional one-to-one coaching, please feel free to contact me at egetisleadership.com. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.